Again, we're in our conversation with David Bedein of Israel Resource News Agency. Now, you mentioned on the Israeli news show not too long ago, yesterday, that the reporter noticed these slogans but just didn't admit what they were. I want to know, why is that? I don't know if we got to go Freudian.
Because people would prefer to believe the myths of the Oslo process. Some people call it the Oslo process, the toilet process. People would prefer to. It's much easier to believe that there's going to be peace and understanding when Israel simply withdraws to the 6 or 7 lines and everything's okay. And she's of that ilk. People have happier lives and better everything. My kids put out for my birthday, they put out a T-shirt. Don't ask David Bedein what's new; he may tell you. In other words, that's what my rabbi often says about yours truly. Don't ask David what's new on Shabbat; he might tell you. The point is, it's much easier to believe. I sat with Arafat Yamak Shmo for 3 hours in an interview, in a long interview, back and forth, and he was waxing about peace. I said, when are you going to say this in the Arab language? So finally, at the end of the conversation, he says he's going to have new school books. Okay, which will be for peace. So he gave me the authorization to buy his new school books. Well, that's what I did. And when I met with the Palestinian Minister of Education in 2000, his name was Naim Abu Hummus. How's that for a name? Naim Abu Hummus. Like as opposed to Trina, whatever. And he said, "Are you going to give great publicity to the books?" I said, "Absolutely." I gave him a promise, and I kept the promise. But the point is, it's much easier to believe in Arafat, and you can get lots more investments and more happiness in your and be loved by the Israel Foreign Ministry and pro-Israel groups around if you say, the peace is around the corner. They just have to do a couple little things, We just have to do a little bit. We have to be a little bit more forthcoming. But I try. This is not. I don't believe in Pinocchio. Pinocchio got punished for telling lies,
right.
And my nose stays the same size, and that's what I can tell you.
All right. Now, obviously, since you're on, I got to get your take and your opinion about the upcoming elections and what your thought of what's going to happen, what should happen, et cetera. So tell us your thoughts.
I don't think it's very complicated. The Arabs are going. I think that the various Arab sources are going to fire like crazy on Israel, and it's going to produce a reaction in the Israeli public which will be very strong. We can't always rely on miracles. Okay, that's we have Hanukkah coming up, and we just finished the Parshas with Yosef being saved and all this kind of stuff. But understand something. This past conflagration in the summer, 3,500 rockets were attacked. And people say Iron Dome. Well, Iron Dome only knocked down 735 of those rockets. 138 of those missiles hit Tel Aviv. Nobody was killed this time. And it has traumatized a good portion of the country. People say, it fell in open areas. My tuchus. It fell on open areas because it just, between 2 schools, next to 2 hospitals, in a sports stadium, but nobody was there. All kinds of issues. Like, Hashem is sometimes forgiving for not only being a journalist, but I have a little kippah on my head, not only because of my bald spots. And we see God protecting us in certain respects. Anyway, there's 100,000 missiles sitting in Lebanon. Good morning. And I guess you can guess that the Israel Ministry of Tourism would never hire me, right? I say, what's the pregnant? Well, 100,000 missiles in Lebanon, and who knows how many thousands of missiles still in Gaza, and the possibility that they will launch something very, very serious, according to my sources in Israeli intelligence, over the next 2 months is very, very serious, because they don't want to compromise on having any restrictions on tunnels or anything else. And we can depend on the Arabs to, I don't want to use those words, but we can expect, and this is from intelligence sources, we can expect Israel's adversaries to be extremely violent in the next few months, and that will affect the election more than anything else.
Wow. Okay. So the idea, but you think if that, God forbid, were to occur, the Israeli people would then respond in saying what? Saying we need to be strong?
Well,
go ahead.
It's kind of difficult to promote the Livni-Herzog position of withdrawal for peace when, you can imagine what would happen if Judea Samaria were a launching pad for missiles, okay?
Right. So
it's kind of hard to do that, and this whole business that, that there's moderate people in the PLO and all that, it's very hard to deal with it. When the rockets are flying, it's hard to promote this process. The same thing with UNRWA. Because the basis of the basis of, and I want everyone to look under the, don't believe me, but look at all the documentation on our website, IsraelBehindTheNews.com. Look under the word UNRWA, UNRWA, and start looking through it, looking to see what documentation we have to show that UNRWA is the source of the attacks. Because why are they attacking from UNRWA? Because UNRWA, they want to recover the lands they lost in 48, so they don't believe that Ashdod, Ashkelon, Beersheba should exist. From their point of view, and Arafat Yamachshua said this to me in an interview, the difference is that UNRWA is viewed as these places like Ashkelon, and Beersheba, they are the ultimate illegal settlements because they're built on top of Arab villages. And understand, I asked him, Arafat, what's the future of our communities in Judea Samaria? He says, you can stay where you are. You didn't take any Arab land. But the real illegal settlements, and this is the basis of their education, are the ones that lost in 48, and that's why they're firing their missiles.
Wow. So, because a lot of times when people think of quote-unquote occupied territories, they don't think of a city like Beersheba when,
That's because they're too young. If you grew up like I did in the 50s, and I was already a news junkie in 1961, 62, when we had our Israel group in my school at Kiba Hebrew Academy in Philadelphia, and the State Department was objecting to settlement expansion in the Negev, and that hasn't changed. The United States wants Israel to abide by the Rhodes Agreements. The Rhodes Agreements were in 1949, which forbid Israel from settling in the Negev and the Galil, and don't think that has changed.
Wow.
Because you know how I find these things out? God gave me a finger, and I make calls, and he asked the State Department, and they give you answers. And by the way, people who think this is an Arab League initiative, call the Arab League. It's easy to call the Arab League. They're listed, no problem, Dial a terrorist. It's easy to call them. Call the Arab League, the League of Arab Nations in Washington and in London and in Ottawa, and ask them a question. Have you amended your charter? No. Are you still at war with Israel? Yes. Next question.
Wow. Again, a great conversation with David Bedein of Israel Resource News Agency. A few more minutes with you. We know you're very busy. I'm just very curious, since I have you on, talk about Tzipi Livni. This is a woman.
You have to talk about Tzipi Livni?
Well, okay, I guess I don't have to, but I'm curious.
Okay.
Because I understand that she was involved with the Mossad, and I want to know why her politics of such a smart woman.
Our information about Tzipi Livni in Israeli intelligence is she was a babysitter, a house sitter for the people in Israeli intelligence. She used to sit there in the apartments while they were going out to their actions. She was not more than that.
So when people say, "Oh, she was a big bad tough Mossad agent," you're saying no, she was a babysitter. She was a house sitter. She was a house sitter. All sources in Israeli intelligence will confirm that's what she did. When they went out, she was making the coffee. I don't want to sound sexist, but she was making coffee. She was making sure that everything was set up. She did nothing more than that. All sources say that. So perhaps that's not the best person to be prime minister. I mean,
Well, yeah, she is. She is not. I recommend people read what Yisrael Harel wrote on Friday in Haaretz about Tzipi Livni's ability to sabotage political parties that she becomes part of.
Wow. Again, fascinating conversation. Everyone, if you want to find out more, where should they go to?
IsraelBehindTheNews.com.
There you go. Go to IsraelBehindTheNews.com. Find out what UNRWA is really trying to do. Find out what people can do. Again, you don't like petitions, but they should just...
No, petitions don't... Anyone who signs a petition realizes it goes in the garbage. Personal letters to policymakers work. I'm going to give you a quote from two different people who said within a week, because I go to different parliaments. The head of the staff director of the House Foreign Relations Committee said that when we get 10 letters, we go into a tizzy. And a major member of parliament said the same thing. Both of them said, don't send us any petitions. Send us private letters, personal letters, which would show passion and knowledge. And they have to show that you're not a nutcase. It works.
Wow,
it works.
Right.
Passionate, serious letters. And when you write letters from Israel, it is taken with what we'll call an Israeli stamp. It's very important. At the same time you send an email, send it in a letter. And boy, does it work.
All right. So it's good to know people can do something about it. You don't got to feel helpless. You don't like the situation. You don't have to do something about it. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem to some degree, right?
That's right. Rabbeinu Eldridge Cleaver said that, and sometime you'll find out who that was.
All right.
Okay. Well, thank you very, very much, and it's a pleasure to be with you today. Shavua Tov, Hanukkah Sameach, and again, the miracles of Hanukkah we saw in the past, we'll see in the future. One of the miracles is when Jews get off their royal tuchuses and do anything. Take care.
All right, thank you so much. Be well. God bless you.
Shalom.
Shalom. All right, that was David Bedein from Israel Resource News Agency. We want to thank him for his time. Folks, in the last 10 minutes or so of this program, I just want to talk a bit about what my goal is with the show and what I'm looking to do. The goal is to broadcast every day, which is what we've been doing, Sunday through Friday. Eventually, I'd like to go to a 3-hour show if possible. And for that to happen, what I need is from help from folks just like yourself to send any donation you can, $18, $36, whatever, but maybe, to my PayPal account, which is IsraelSportsRadio@yahoo.com. A lot of people have been complaining about my microphone, for example, and you're right. This microphone I'm using is not that good. I've interviewed very famous people on this microphone, but the reason why this microphone is not that good is because I need the funds to buy a new microphone. That's where it's at. This Skype microphone I'm using is a 100-shekel microphone. That's why it sounds the way it sounds. I've gotten several emails about it. I understand the situation, but I need someone to send me money so I can buy a microphone. That's kind of where we're at. So I need that to happen, and I'd obviously like to get more equipment. I'd like to get some staff members if possible. I'm doing this entire show myself. All the editing, the production, all the booking the guests, the research for the questions is all on me. And really, I'm going to need some more assistance if we're going to make the show last and if make the show go up in quality. So that's all up to everyone listening. It's not a whole lot of money that I'm asking from each person. Like I said, $36, and the PayPal account is IsraelSportsRadio@yahoo.com. Again, we're getting a lot of great guests out to the folks out there. Had Rabbi Yossi Mizrahi, Dr. Joan Schroeder. We're going to have Ken Spiro coming up. Rabbi Ken Spiro is the historian. So, we're putting out great shows, and we need help from the audience so we could continue, because I can't keep doing this not without any funds. It's just the way it is. There isn't anything out there that doesn't have funds involved. So everyone out there listening, you like the show, want the show to continue, want the show to stay, the PayPal account is IsraelSportsRadio@yahoo.com. Also, shout out to my friend Baruch Gallo, who's getting married, and he was a lone soldier in the Israel Defense Forces and also a security person at the hotel. You can find him on Facebook. He's a friend of mine, Baruch Mordechai Garcia Gallo. My email personally is messiahhour@gmail.com, and you can also find me on Facebook under Ari Louis, ARILOUIS. And want to make a shout out to a friend of mine out in Arizona. His name is Daniel Miller. He's been a big supporter of mine for a long, long time, and a good friend of mine. And I know he listens to all these programs, so shout out to him. I certainly appreciate him as well. And I want to give some thoughts. We're in Hanukkah right now, and it's very interesting, the holiday, because it is not originally in Tanakh. I mean, we adopted those books later on. Originally, those books, the Maccabee books, were used by the Catholics, but not by the Jews. And there was a different tradition of when the books were used and not used. And it's considered by many to be a minor holiday. It's not a Chag or Shabbat. You're allowed to do work. You're allowed to go about your daily business. But it's interesting because it's, in many respects, the most celebrated holiday among the Jewish people and the most known. Non-Jews know about it probably more than any other Jewish holiday. When I was going to school in Arizona, people all knew about Hanukkah, and when I went to school during the week, they wondered why I was doing that, because I thought I'd be off for 8 days. And it's something that's known. The Adam Sandler song obviously was a part of that in the late 90s, even though the song is not actually correct if you look at it. He mentioned Jewish people that really are Jewish, et cetera, those type of things. But it's just part of the whole festivities. And it's interesting because this particular holiday is about publicizing the miracle. A lot of our religion is kind of based in the home, around the home, Shabbat meals in the home, prayer groups are in a building. Usually it's the kotel's outside. And this is a situation with Hanukkah where we actually put our menorahs outside, or we put them in a windowsill. We want people to see it. And that includes even in places outside of Israel like the United States where there are non-Jewish people. We want to show the non-Jewish people that we survived the Greeks. The Greeks tried to kill us, and they weren't able to get that done. we survived and we thrived and we continue our religion, and our religion will last forever, and the Jewish people will last forever. So it is interesting how this holiday does that and the other holidays don't. I mean, Passover, Pesach, we were almost destroyed by the Egyptians. We were enslaved by them. They were crushing us. And when we escape, we don't publicize the miracle. We have a Seder, we have a dinner where we talk about what happened, talk about leaving Mitzrayim, leaving Egypt, having the sea split, having all the miracles happen, but we don't publicize it. And that's just something I want everybody to think about. I don't have a particular answer of why that is, but I want people to think about it, ask that question. A lot of times on the show, if we can't come up with an answer, we at least want to post a question out there for other people to think about. It's important. I don't want people in general to do things in Judaism by rote. If people don't know why they're doing things, that's not good. That's not going to be long-lasting. That'll eventually fade out. So people got to know. And if they can't get an answer, they at least got to try to search for the answer, try to find the answer. And that's a question I want to pose to everybody listening is why is it we publicize this miracle, but we don't publicize miracles that occurred in other holidays? I mean, Shavuot is when God gave the Jewish people the Torah. That's a pretty big miracle. And we don't really publicize it. We learn Torah all night, and we pray in the morning, and we go to sleep. So something I want everyone to think about. And the last thing I'll mention, it's not a coincidence that this week's Parsha is about Miketz. It's about Yosef being freed from prison. This Parsha always happens on the Shabbat during Hanukkah, always. And that's trying to teach us something, because Hanukkah looked like we were done. Even though God promised that the Jewish people will last forever, it looked like somehow he wasn't going to keep his promise, as weird as that sounds. I mean, we were in a very bad situation. It's crazy when you think about the Maccabees. People have the idea that Maccabees were these young 20-year-olds in shape, buff, that fought the Greeks. Not true. These were a few very old rabbis, very frail, very weak, a few of them, that beat the Maccabees. That beat the Greeks. It was a total miracle. It was an obvious miracle. And it looked like, though, we weren't going to win. And that's happened even a few times in modern Jewish history. Six-Day War, for example. It looked like we were going to get kicked out of Israel. 1973, the joke was the last person to leave the airport turned the light off. It looked like it wasn't going to happen. And with Yosef, he might have thought at one point, maybe not, that he was going to be in prison for the rest of his life. He had a very tough life up until that point, up until he was freed. His mother died very early when he was young. His brothers hated him. His brothers sold him to slavery. He was arrested on trumped-up charges and then in the prison. He probably thought, wow, God doesn't like me. My life's not going anywhere. Why me? Why did this happen? And within a second, within a flash, because we say salvation happens in a second, within a flash, he became one of the most powerful people on planet Earth. He ruled Egypt for about 80 years, just in a snap. And it's interesting about destiny. I like studying destiny, looking at people's patterns. Wherever Yosef went, he was always the leader. He was always the guy in charge. Among the brothers, his father listened to him. When he was working for Potiphar, he was the head there. When he was in the prison, he basically ran the prison. And then when he got to Pharaoh put him in charge. It was just what it was meant to be. It's what he was meant to do. That's just who he was. That was his leadership qualities that shined out, and we saw that. And so he ran the most powerful country in the world for 80 years. Very, very few people have ever done anything like that. Even King David ran Israel for 40 years, and King Solomon for 40 years. But no one ran, and at that time Israel was the most powerful country in the world, and pretty soon it will be most powerful again. When Joseph ran Egypt, it was the most powerful country in the world, and he did it for 80 years. And at one point it looked like, even though he was running the prison, I'm sure he wasn't happy being in prison. It's prison. And he probably thought he was going to be there forever. There was no particular sign that he was going to be released. And back in those days, it wasn't like there was CNN and Fox that could report about injustice, people being in prison when they shouldn't be, people being in prison for too long. He probably thought he was going to be in prison forever. And he was saved. He was released. So just remember that in our lives, we go through tough times, we go through whatever happens. Salvation could happen in a second. We could be freed in a second. We could have really great things happen in a second. So everybody keep that in mind. And like I said, it's not a coincidence that the Parsha we read of Shabbat during Hanukkah is when Yosef is freed from prison. I want to thank everybody for listening. Our guest this afternoon is David Bedein of Israel Resource News Agency. You can check out his website, IsraelBehindTheNews.com. And if you want to email me with any questions, comments, concerns, complaints, it is a Jewish country, you can do so on messiahhour@gmail.com. Once again, that is messiahhour@gmail.com. And check out our programming on YouTube. If you go to YouTube, type in Messiah Hour. And you can find me on Facebook as well, Ari Louis. That's ARILOUIS. I love when people chat with me on Facebook. Anything they want to express, I like to hear it. I like to hear any show topics they want me to discuss in the future. You've been listening to Is It Prophecy on IsraelNationalRadio.com.